So I would like to announce that we will start the first seminar about European Electronic Health Record Exchange format. What is it and why it's matter? It will be the first webinar series from the XpanDH project, and I would like to say be welcome to all the audience to this interesting event. So to start the webinar, I would like to present some of the rules that will be guiding our event today and also for the next webinars. So the main housekeeping rules basically, please, the people from the audience and also to support the discussion, please unmute your microphone when you're speaking or asking some questions. So basically the microphone of all the participants will be muted, just unmute it when you are needed to speak or do some questions. Also, our speakers have a great expertise and insight about this point. So feel free to post your questions on the chat box using the Q&A place on the Zoom meetings. So the questions that you provided will be after on answered during the presentation on the end of the event. So this webinar also will be recorded and distributed as a podcast and YouTube channel from the XpanDH project. So if you unfortunately missing the webinar right now, you can also reach it on the YouTube account or in your podcast in order to update about the discussion that we're doing today. So today we will receive I would like to present some people. My name is Anderson Carmo. I will be the moderator of this webinar. I'm also a project manager from the XpanDH project and the work packet leader from the work packet 1 from this project. And I will be the moderator of this interesting webinar. And for the first panelist, I would like to invite Kyriacos Hatzaras. He is program officer and the EU policies on the CNECT and the European Commission. Also, Kyriacos has a great experience that includes application infrastructure system design and service delivery as operational, including change management, business transformation, line team project relationship management, also vendor management, and include also experience in regulatory systems on the UK and US by now. And please, Kyriacos, thank you so much for accepting the invitation from present a little bit for us. And I would like to open the floor to your presentation. Thank you so much.
Many thanks, Anderson. Can I just ask if you can hear me, if my sound is coming through? Okay, so we can move forward to the first slide. And a very warm welcome to all attendees. I am here on behalf of the European Commission's DG CONNECT to talk to you about the EEHRxF, which is a bit of a long acronym that means or is about the European Electronic Record Exchange format. There is, of course, a policy background, as typically is the case for any intervention of the European Commission. And the policy background takes us back to the year of 2019, where there was a Commission recommendation on the essential elements and building blocks for a European Electronic Health Record Exchange format. This was published on the 6th of February 2019, and you can see just a copy of the official journal on the right-hand side of the slide. Important is to mention that this has been introduced as part of the European Union's digital strategy. Next slide, please. The policy background includes a few more recent elements. First of all, the rather universally accepted need for the digital transformation of health and care. For us in the European Union, this typically means the access of the citizens to their health data. And that includes the cross-border case, so enabling citizens to access their health data both in member states, in the member state of origin, and across the Union, across the EU. In response to the need for digital transformation in healthcare, the European Health Data Space is our newly proposed regulation, which is presently under negotiation between the institutions and member state governments. The European Electronic Health Record Exchange format is included in the articles that you see on screen of the proposed regulation. Essentially, this is about the citizens' right to receive a copy of their electronic health record in this format, and also enable its transfer from one provider of their choice to the next. That transfer is intended to be facilitated and based on the European Electronic Health Record Exchange format. And in addition to these two, we have had for a while now the ambitious targets as part of Europe's digital decade. These targets cover a range of areas. E-health is one, and for e-health, the aim is for 100% of our citizens to have access to their medical records online by the year 2030. Next slide, please. And of course, as with any technology artifact, the basic question is, so what is it? What is the European Electronic Health Record Exchange format? Now, we can begin to answer this question by looking at these cross-border exchange health information domains. These are the data categories or health information domains prioritized initially by the eHealth network, and more recently also in the proposed regulation of the European Health Data Space. These priority categories are patient summaries, e-prescriptions and e-dispensations, laboratory reports, medical images and radiology reports, the reports bound to each medical imaging study, and then the hospital discharge reports. 4 of these have now featured officially in the European Health Data Space proposed regulation. These are patient summary, lab reports, medical images, and the radiology reports, and the hospital discharge reports. In terms of the format itself, it is very useful to highlight that the electronic health record exchange format is not the EHR itself. It is a format for the exchange of health information contained in electronic health records. And in that sense, on the right-hand side of the slide, those more experts among you will begin to see some familiar aspects, so what we call as the technical or binding dimensions of the exchange format. Examples include the data groups, data fields, cardinalities, so whether a particular group or field is mandatory, is a must, or a should, the data types and the code systems and value sets that support these types when in the encoding of health information in the first instance, and of course when it comes for that health information to be exchanged. More recently, of course, by using the well-known and very broadly used standards of CDA and now the upcoming FHIR standard, we have recently included content representation and message transfer as components of these technical and binding dimensions. And in addition, because it is a technology artifact which is very much live, we have to think about, we as a collective, meaning community actors involved in the EEHRxF, how we manage it. So these are the dimensions we call process dimensions, and it's all about change control as a first example of the specifications, the use case and workflow descriptions, the requirements catalog that the EEHRxF aims to support, the appropriate architecture or architectures of the infrastructure that carries the exchange, release management and conversion instructions and tools, and testing procedures and tools. This list is growing, and no doubt other elements will be included as confirmed by the actors that are involved in the design and maintenance of the EEHRxF. Next slide, please. So before we talk about these actors and who they are, it might be quite important actually to sit back for one moment and think about the key elements for adoption, especially so as we are, as it is universally accepted at this capacity building stage. So we have at least the basics of the EEHRxF, and we start to look at how to build capacity for its adoption across the member states. So I always find very useful a reminder of these well-known characteristics and determinants for innovation adoption, as put forward initially by Everett Rogers in 1962. And these are trialability, the ability of those who are looking to adopt the standard to try it and see what it might mean for them. The advantage relative to what is already there. So what is the advantage in essence for when we use the EEHRxF? Compatibility, how compatible is the format with our organizational standards? How complex is it, and can we observe it? Can we see it in action when we try and facilitate an exchange? So these are very key elements to review and provide feedback on its acceptability and implementability. Next slide, please, and I will just finish with the overview of ongoing and past activities. In gray and white, you see the activities that have gone on before. And the flow, I would be very grateful for one more click. And yes, so the flow of the attributes for the EEHRxF starts with the work for My Health at EU, the cross-border EHDSI infrastructure for the exchange of health information in the EU, and the eHealth network guidelines that govern the design and operation of these services. The role of XpanDH and similar projects funders is to support and build on these aspects and confirm them in terms of their implementability and acceptability. And these feedback elements will feed into the Joint Action 09, which is meant to be starting this year. And it is the Joint Action 09 as a project that will deliver the implementable specifications we will need for that wider adoption of the EEHRxF. Many thanks, and looking forward to the contributions of the other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kyriacos. It was a pleasure hearing you about the electronic health record exchange format. Now I would like to invite Marcelo Melgara to speak a little bit to us. So Marcelo Melgara has more than 40 years of experience in setting up definition, coordination, management among different European and national research projects, basically linked with the health universe and ecosystem. Marcelo has great experience in those projects and have more than 35 years of experience in business process and improvement successfully applied to the clinical and managemental hospitals process, and more than 30 years of experience in human resource management and other points. So first of all, I would like to thank you so much, Marcelo Melgara, to accept it to speak to us in the seminar, and I would like to open the floor to your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anderson. Good afternoon to everybody. If you go to the first slide, first of all, thank you, Kyriacos, because you mentioned this. That was one of intermediate point. The starting point was EPSIS, you know, the large-scale pilot that started in 2008. But this recommendation, sorry if I wrote communication, was the first point in which we identified additional document to be exchanged on top to the existing patient summary and e-prescription. And on the bottom, I also added the original clinical document. And if you click, we can go in detail on each of them. So click once more, please. Okay, so the patient summary. The patient summary was one of the first documents that were defined by member state at cross-border level in order to stimulate the creation of health within the member state. So we go back to 2008. And if we look to the current, meaning end of last year, number of exchange patient summary, that was 1,200 more. It means that a lot of things are still to be done within the member state. This is not due to the lack of specification, but to the lack of readiness of member state. Now, what we have is a patient summary that is based on the international standard, mostly the ISO CEN International Patient Summary and the HL7 Implementation Guide. And we're working in the direction of going more and more toward the standardization. E-prescription. E-prescription was another document that was started at this time, 2008. The situation here is much better. We started exchanging document in November 2019 in the My Health at EU, and we had more than 50,000, 53,000 more or less e-prescription, 20,000 e-dispensation. That means that there is a gap between what was prescribed and visualized for dispensation and what could be really dispensed. And this is a point on which we are working on several different tables together with the National Competent Authority for Drugs, with EMA, the European Agency for Medicinal Product, the Unicom project, in order to increase the number of exchange documents and increase the number of possible dispensation. And also in this case, we are aligning to the international standard HL7 in term pharmacy guideline. If you click once more, we are entering to the new document. So the lab result report was one of the outcome of the Cross Health project. And we defined together with My Health at EU change proposal to be used for wave 8. Now we are deploying wave 6. So it means in 2 years' time, this will become an element exchange. It is inspired again to standard HL7 laboratory. I think Catherine will say a lot about this. We have already the guideline adopted by the eHealth network, the release 1.0, and we hope the new release, the 1.1, that will also include the laboratory summary, summarizing lab report, will be adopted in June this year. And we really hope to be able to enter into implementation and operation with lab result report, as it was mentioned by Kyriacos. Hospital discharge, please click. And this is another good element, because if patient summary does not exist or patients do not exist in the member state, hospital discharge exists as lab result exists. So these are existing documents in the member state, and it should be easier to find them in order to get the important information exchange cross-border. And we have prepared already a draft guideline in EHRxF network subgroup on semantic. This should be adopted by the EHRxF network for implementation in November this year. Images. Images is another situation, if you click, please. And it is extremely needed, extremely promising, but here we have a but. The but is that the level implementation within the member state of new standard like DICOM, like other standard, is still under development. So it has more or less the same timeline of the labs, but we have to expect maybe something more in order to get exchange of image report, radiology report. This will be easy, but exchange of images, this will require a lot of elements. And if you click once, this original clinical document that are considered in operation in My Health at EU since 1 year or more, but in the reality, they are not exchanged. And the feedback that we are getting is that, of course, original clinical document is exchange PDF document. And the fact is that if something in English, it is understood. If it's something in non-Latin alphabet, it is hard to understand. So it was not included among the document in the communication of February last year, 3 years ago, but it was considered as a point of potential interest, but still not implemented. If you click, we are entering into the future situation, and the future is the result of an activity performed in the here network subgroup technical interoperability together with my health@EU is building the decision of the health network, the board of the Ministry of Health, to go toward 5. So end of March, the decision was taken. And the three first target document that will be implemented in 5 are lab result report, hospital discharge, and image. So in the case of the lab report, we are in the condition of having the guideline fully approved, a proof of concept is under development, and we have only to consider, together with the implementers, meaning solution provider and the member state, if we can respect the go live in operation in wave 8. For the other two, we are preparing technology independent. In Kyriacos' presentation, these implementable specifications are not fully technology independent. Of course, we need several technical details in order to implement. We are planning to do it not at the level of the health network, but at the level of my health@EU preparation, new change proposal, and new implementation. So the roadmap is to have for wave 9, meaning in 3-year times, but we have to work quite hard. If you click, now let's go to the member state expectation. So the reality is that member states are implementing at national level, based on the recovery funds, the evolution of the electronic health record system. This is the case of Italy. It is not just the case of Italy. So we are specifying the documents that are exactly those that were listed before to be included in the electronic health record, to be included as CDA and in future in FHIR. So we are developing our specification, and hopefully we are in very strict connection and cooperation with the board working group at European level. So we are aligning our national specification to the European one, because if we are not aligned, then it will be very hard to be ready for the new regulation. It will be very hard to create the document to be sent. And the second point is what we need. We need implementable specific standards. Standards tends to be evolving and moving target. We need stable standards, and also that are not considering only the opinion of the expert, but things that are really related to the real world. And we need a clear roadmap, a short, medium, long-term, realistic roadmap for implementation, because we have to plan our stable specification are included already in the standard. We know we have a process, a change management process at European level, in which every year we prepare change proposal aligned to the new standard, to align to the new code system, to align, but at the end, every change is a problem. And we have really to consider only what is a clear enhancement of the status quo as a reason for creating this change. Maybe you know, I'm also chairing in the my health@EU semantic transport semantic, and so we are always in between the decision of making it more sexy or make it more usable. And I think for the time being, we have to make it more usable. And Kyriacos mentioned the regulation. We believe the regulation will be an element to facilitate national implementation, because when we have clarity, things are evolving in the right direction. We don't want to get just in position. We want, as we are doing, as we did in the last already 15 years, in this process of creating together, co-creating the interoperability at political, semantic, implementation level, to continue on that line, taking advantage of the fact that current services are on a voluntary base. After the regulation will be mandatory service. So it is extremely important that we are very well aligned to international standards. And if you click, now we're taking the aspect of the healthcare professional. So we are always saying, put the patient in the center, okay, as a joke. But if we put in the center, we will put him in the center of a thunderstorm. Many things are happening. The reality is that we are really, for sure, not ready to implement 100% services that are covering 100% of the population in all the 27 plus 2 member states, because in my ISCTE we also have Norway and Iceland. So this is extremely challenging. We need to take patient into consideration, but we are still in the implementation phase. And we are really in the situation of listening to patient and health professional requests. And I'm not sure if we are ready to face the fact they are acquiring the consciousness that is their right to have data exchange. Because first of all, we should reach a sort of critical mass. And as we did in my ISCTE before starting a broad communication strategy, we need to reach a level in which we have to inform patients of something that exists, not about something that will exist maybe in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So this is important, because otherwise we are losing the trust and the confidence of patient towards us. And remember, patient needs healthcare services, not standard. So we really have to listen to their real needs. And another point that we are always keeping in mind, but it is important to mention, I believe, it is patient safety. Patient safety, remember, is even more important than privacy, because our privacy is infringed every other day. But patient safety, when we implement the service, we must keep in mind that it's not as a proof of concept, it's for real patients who have really to work, keeping in mind patient safety. And we need standard specification. No, click, please. Perfect, thank you. So we need standard, we need implementable specification. We need that these specifications are not based just on the fancy of people like me, expert in semantic, expert in standard, expert in specification. We really to tailor this specification and this standard to the clinical need, to the clinical usability, to the patient accessibility, to the patient information. So my last slide is really a sort of a request of help from real health professional, not supposed health professional, meaning the practicing one, and also patient, because our specification, our standard, our service at the end will not be used if they're not complying the needs of our customer, meaning health professional and patient. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Marcello. It was a great presentation. Now, I would like to invite our last panelist, Katerina Kronak. Katerina Kronak is currently General Secretary from the AGL7 Europe, and also Vice President of EMIA at European Federation for Medicinal Informatics. So, Katerina, I would like to open the floor. And first of all, thank you so much for accepting being a panelist here on our first event. Thank you so much.
May I have the screen? Thank you. May I share my screen, if I may? Okay, so let me go to my screens. It's a great honor to be here in this first webinar, and I was asked to discuss the challenges for the implementation and adoption of the European Electronic Health Record Exchange format, and also take the perspective of a standard development organization, and that would be HL7 Europe. I looked back at my slides, and here is my why. I think it's a little bit different perspective from the one that Kyriacos showed in the beginning, and it goes back probably 2017 when I wrote this particular slide, and it was at that time that Eric Topol, reflecting on the digital transformation of health and care, wrote the book, The Patient Will See You Now. It was a great time, that time, 2017-18, because there was a movement, the participatory care, the 23andMe on genomics, a lot of nonprofits around, all of them about engaging and empowering the patient. It was also a very important time for us in Europe, because at that time we were building on the work that Marcello described. My health at EU was EHRxF at the time, next to EPSOS. And we were looking also at the other end of the Atlantic, what the Americans were doing. And at that time, as you see on the right side of this slide, there was a very important questionnaire that was distributed to Americans by Surescripts. And it links to the patient summary work. And that slide says that 55% of the patients report that their general practitioner does not know their medical history. It's missing or it's incomplete. 49% are not aware of what their prescription is. 61% do not know about their allergies. They don't know in 40% about their medical conditions. They aren't aware of recent surgeries and hospitalizations at 44%. So there is a gap of knowledge. And for me, this particular gap is what the European Electronic Health Record Exchange format is trying to bridge for Europe. With this format, we will be able to give patients what they need when they are accessing their electronic health records. They can take their data in a format that is understood and reusable across systems. So they can be the mediators between health professionals, and they can frankly be at the center of their care. I think this is an important mission for any of us as a patient, but also as an engineer or as a health professional to make this happen. But time is very limited, and I would like very much to formulate my view on the challenges and where actually standards can help. And the main point here is that we should mind the gap. We should mind the gap between the strategic intent and our capability to deliver. And I think this is actually a phrase that is very close to what Marcello said. But let's listen to a few of the challenges. There are a lot. I selected just a few. And also, please use the chat and the Q&A to also add your own answer to these questions. The first question is, what is in the core of the European Electronic Health Record Exchange format? And this has been answered both by Kyriacos and by Marcello. My point of view is that they are common specifications for priority health information domains. So this can be labs, this can be patient summaries for specific conditions and so on. And this is what is important here, that this is an extensible list that is also bound to specific workflows of care provision. It could be care plans, for instance, or it could be a report from a telemedicine act. Yeah. So please go ahead and add your own views on that. The second one is, who needs to implement the European Electronic Health Record Exchange format? Who needs to understand it? Because remember, interoperability is access and ability to use productively. Well, I say here, electronic health record systems, but also digital health systems and services, also health and wellness apps. They need to be able to implement it, and they need to be able to understand it for selected priority health information domains. Where does it need to be available to make an impact for everyone? Remember, please weigh in on this. Hospitals, I say, healthcare facilities, medical homes. I would also add our own home, our car, our transport system. How do we attest to its adoptions? That's an interesting one. That could be a CE mark. That could be self-certification. That could be an industry label. That could be community testing. And when do we declare success? When we have some readiness criteria for an organization and maturity levels from the standards, which, by the way, are global standards. with the European Electronic Health Record Exchange formats, and that's where standards help, Europe is raising its voice in the global standards arena. And I know the sense of time as well, so I'd like to share with you some of the work we did in 2015-17, where we were asked to formulate a roadmap for the large-scale deployment of standards. And there we articulated the vision of the global health ecosystem, where people have the ability to navigate the system with data, and there are interoperability assets that fuel creativity, entrepreneurship, and innovation. And in that frame, there is a new version of health IT standards, e-standards, which will nurture digital health innovation, strengthen Europe's voice and impact, and enable co-creation and trusted provider and user relationships. At the time, we developed this cycle of development of standards, which is similar to the cycle that you saw in Kyriacos' slide, where we go from base standards to use cases, to tools, education, assurance testing, live deployment, forums that monitor the development of the standards, feedback, and maintenance. So this was 2017, what have we been doing as a community the last 7 years? Well, one thing is that we are trying to capture these lessons in one of the deliverables that are upcoming. And that deliverable actually will be requesting also the impact of the team and the larger community, the ecosystem. We have also improved in collaboration between standards bodies in developing cooperatively standards. The specification in EHRxF were co-led between HL7 and IHC with support from CEN. So there is a lot of growth in this collaboration and maturity, and this is also reflected in the Joint Initiative Council and the UNICOM project, where we have a larger group of standards bodies working to improve European standards and the strength of Europe in the global arena, of course. And lastly, EHRxF did something very nice in addition to this pledge that we launched then. We created a registry of products, a registry of projects, and a community of practice. All these are carried over and they complement the creation of standards. These are the elements of the roadmap, and I will not describe this complex slide to you, but I would like to focus on the center, the ability to maintain a set of artifacts and information, but also to facilitate trust and flow, to build, nurture, and maintain trust in the data, because this is at the core of a well-functioning health system, and also to make this dynamic through appropriate security and privacy mechanisms. I would like also to show you this last slide as a close, and this is actually our latest version of this first slide, and it actually answers also to one of the questions in the chat. Now we are not talking about base standards, but we are talking about global standards. We are talking about business use case information domains, and that's where the X bundles that XpanDH will be working on, and all the communities welcome to help us. And X bundles, it's not only the technical specifications, but it's everything that goes around them and makes us develop the capacity that is needed to achieve adoption. There is tools and education. There is also data sets that can help us trial and essentially lower the cost of implementing standards. There is assurance and testing and live deployment. That's the experimentation bundles. And there are forums and monitoring of these developments at the community level, and that's the XNets. There's feedback and maintenance, and there is actually the ability to report back to standards bodies at the global level and mature the standards. On the left, you see some of the key points of the standards roadmap of 2017, many of which are relevant today. The identification of keystone projects at grassroots within the member states. So it's not only about My Health at EU, but it's also in the member states, as Marcello said, to develop the capacity and outreach, invest in education, because if people know how to use the electronic health record exchange format, then this will be the success. And this will be what makes the difference in safety in healthcare using data, and essentially develop the platform that would help us grow. And I will stop here. Thank you very much. Back to you, Anderson.
Thank you so much, Catherine. It was a great presentation. Now, I would like to invite all the panelists to have a quick discussion with some of the questions, also try to answer some questions from the audience and the question and answer here. So I would like to drive the first question to Kyriacos and say, as you know, we have a kind of celebrate 1 year after the proposal of the European Health Data Space now. And so I would like to know and start the discussion how and what are the adoption of the how the adoption of the European Electronic Health Record Exchange formats have impacted on the healthcare delivery in the past year since the European Commission proposal was launched.
Thank you, Anderson. So I think we will, of course, have to recognize that the proposed regulation for the European Health Data Space still is a proposed regulation. It still is under negotiation. Nevertheless, we do see that the format has been generally embraced and viewed very positively from across the by actors from across the ecosystem, which that really shows and signifies that there is a need. And of course, we know that indeed the need is there. If, for example, we pause and think of stories in our families and elsewhere of citizens wanting to receive care across borders and looking for that specialist care in other countries across the EU. So we understand, we see in the practical sense, there is a need, but we have to also understand that it is, we are at an early stage. That means that the proposed regulation will have to be ratified. And this also means we do have the time to do the preparatory work necessary for that adoption. And I think both Catherine and Marcelo have clearly shown where that work has to take place.
Yes, sure. This would be great to have like some comments from Marcelo and Catherine in these regards.
Okay, I connect just to say it's hard to add other things. As I said, we need the regulation as a mandatory element to come to the point in which all member states are obliged to work in the direction that was politically set before EPSIS, during EPSIS. And I would like to say hello, Frederick Linden. You are the coordinator of EPSIS. So happy to see you here. And thank you for all what you have done. And we're continuing on that route. So now we're entering the phase in which what is optional will become mandatory. And we have to work in this direction according to a roadmap, a clear and shared roadmap between the Commission and the member state and the different agencies. So really, we have this regulation. Then we have another regulation that is the one related to pharmacologists. So that part of the pharmacopoeia and pharma regulation should be aligned to this. Otherwise, we are creating a problem in a very smooth sharing of information from, for example, the prescription, the medication, the usage of the medication, etc. I saw a question on rare disease. I saw Kyriacos is asking to answer, only to say we are taking into consideration also this in the patient summary, but I leave the floor for this to Kyriacos first.
Thanks, Marcelo. So very briefly to add to this response that when it comes to interoperability with electronic health record standards from other regions in our world, there are other projects that are handling that aspect. So for example, in previous years, we have had Trillium Bridge and Trillium Bridge 2. And of course, it all started with the EU-US Health IT collaborative and the two groups that were working at the time, of which I was, I happen to be a member. And of course, Catherine is very well placed to talk about what happened after that time. So from 2015 onwards, the European Electronic Health Record Exchange format really is meant for use within the EU. It is meant to facilitate cross-border care in the first instance and access to the health record for our citizens in Europe. So the focus is really on the European citizen and its everyday needs when it comes to healthcare.
I'd like to add to that, indeed Europe needs to consolidate at this stage. At the same time, we don't lose focus as far as standards bodies are concerned, and in this collaboration between CEN, HL7, at least we try, and ISO in the JIC, we try to find ways to be able to report the specific needs of Europe to the global arena. So we support as Europeans global standards. But indeed, our first objective is to make sure that we have consolidated in Europe and reduce the fragmentation so that we have better and safer and trusted services for Europeans. A very specific example I would like to mention is our participation from the Gravitate Health project in the Balkan Accelerator. There was recently a Euro-Balkan event here, which essentially tries to address the issue of clinical trials and how things that like the electronic health record exchange format can contribute through the patient summary standards to a global core. So there are many things that are interrelated. And what the role that we see in this collaborative of standards bodies in Europe is this level playing field that would be one step before the formal activities that Marcello discussed with the member states, with the agencies, which are more costly and more lengthy in time. So to accelerate those, we need to be faster in responding to user needs and more adaptable. And as Americans might say, fail quickly, yeah, and rebound. Thank you.
And if you allow me, last year we worked together, Konstantin, Kyriacos, others, on the G7 guideline for health. And these aspects were touched to drive the world toward the international patient summary that was an European creation. And this guideline, I don't know when it will be revised, but I think they're extremely important because they don't represent just Europe, but really United States, Canada, Japan, etc. So for those who would like really to look to this, of course, they're a very high level. There is a roadmap included in them for the gradual adoption of the international patient summary. So if we keep coherence with those G7 guidelines, we are in a good way of continuing what the Kyriacos mentioned, and Catherine knows very well, the EU-US Memorandum of Understanding for patient interoperability.
Absolutely, Marcello. And this reminds me also of the work that Robert Stegui is spearheading with the Dutch Ministry of Health in the GDHP, the Global Consortium for Digital Health Interoperability. I think that's the name of it. And also, I would like also to mention the work of Giorgio Cangioli now on labs, on the FHIR specification for laboratories, which has like 80 experts right now from all over Europe. And the work is publicly available at the HL7 Europe Confluence site and GitHub. So for every one of you, please, if you feel like contributing, go ahead. And this is actually the answer also to hospitals and other healthcare facilities and vendors, whether they will jump in and implement. I think raising the simplicity and the lowering the cost of implementation is what will make the difference. And this is actually what we are trying to do with XpanDH.
Exactly.
Anderson, if I may, I offer to answer one further question, and I will read it aloud as it was put in the chat box. So it is by Paul Kujit, if the pronunciation is correct, apologies if not, and it reads, will the software houses for e.g. hospital information systems adapt their systems to integrate EEHRxF? The answer to this is as follows. We have to wait and see the outcome of the political negotiations on the European Health Data Space proposed regulation. Assuming that some of the content of the regulation is taken forward and ratified, as it regards the vendors of EHR system, then the or systems, then the brief answer is yes, in future. So yes, they will have. Now, some of the longer term elements there are that we will be facilitating, and we means collectively the European Commission and the active stakeholders in the domain will be facilitating those interactions with the vendors, starting with an event we are looking to organize on the EEHRxF, a summit or a conference in the autumn of this year, where key stakeholders and all stakeholders that feel they need to contribute will be invited to attend and offer that clarity as to how the standards is to be brought about and co-constructed with that key stakeholder participatory element.
Thank you. So
let me answer the last question, if I may, Anderson.
yes, please.
Eleonora Pazzeri is asking about the ethical aspects of this project connected with sharing health data across EU countries. I think the important is to focus on the positive side of this, the safety that we offer to every European citizens by giving them higher quality data. So it's about quality, and of course, GDPR is applicable as the baseline regulation. And if you remember, GDPR also gives patients the right to their data. What we are offering here is one step forward in data that are easier to use, easier to donate, perhaps with pseudonymization, and that can contribute to a more competitive Europe that serves better other citizens.
Thank you, Catherine. Anyone who would like to complement this question? Okay, so I think that you have time for one question, so I will pick up one from the question and answer. So
can I suggest to go for patient access?
Yes,
patient-centered, if you don't mind.
Please, this is
so yes, Stefan, it's key. You remember that Epstein we implemented the patient access, and it was operated but not operational because of legal aspect. Now, as you know, there is a project called PATED in which 6 countries will really try to put in operation the patient access concept, that is giving the patient the possibility of not just accessing to his own document at national level, but accessing to his document in a selected language. And this is an advantage of the semantic translation in MyHealth@EU, that is a robust translation, not at the Google. So yes, we are putting the patient in the center, not of the thunderstorm, but on the fact that he has the right of reading his document. In Trillium, we mentioned the patient-mediated access to take a document, translate into a selected language, and show to the health professional while abroad, just to facilitate the communication. And it is also an answer to the other anonymous that asks, is in the right of the patient to decide which documents are shared. Yes, absolutely correct. And this is valid at national level. So a patient can decide always to hide or not hide the document. And of course, if it is an hidden document, that document is not sent abroad, is not retrieved by anyone. And this is a patient freedom of selecting, as it is a patient freedom to share the document, as it is extremely important that all the security and privacy are taken into consideration. And we all member states know how long it is to demonstrate to the Commission that we are compliant to this part. And we are working also at legal level with the Commission in order to have a unified data processing impact assessment, just to be sure and make the other sure that things are done correctly in respect of the privacy, in respect of the security, and in respect of the safety. So my view, medium long-term view, is we will really provide access to patients, full access to the information, full control of their own information for primary use. Secondary use is not my field, and we know this is something we are really willing to, but the situation in the European member states are so different from one country to another country that the general concept of sharing anonymized data is true in theory, impossible in practice. So this is another element on which we have to work together, member state, data protection authorities at national level and central level, in order to allow with this smooth sharing of data for scientific purposes. But this is still a dream, in my opinion. Apart from some experiment, it's still a dream. And with the hope of being able not just to give access and share documents, but also share data for secondary use, I would like to say thank you to everybody.
So thank you, Marcello, thank you, Kyriacos, thank you, Caterina. It was amazing to have you here today to discuss a little bit about the electron health record exchange format. This thematic is still new for most of the people that are embarking now in the health world, and with this point, we will try. I would like to announce with the people that are listening to us now that we will try to answer all the questions that we posted here and try to publish it after later on. And also from the last to close this point, I would like to ask you to find us on your social media from the Expand project. So you can just scan this QR code here and also have access to all the social media from the XpanDH project and discover more about the electron health record exchange format and how the developments that we are doing to provide more quality and also security for the health data from the patients among the Europe. So thank you so much for this great time that you have here today, and hope to see you on the next webinar promoted by the XpanDH. Thank you so much, all the audience and all the panelists.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Anderson.
Thank you. Bye-bye.